Appreciate everyone for joining us for Coach Franklin's weekly press conference. We'll start with an opening statement from Coach, and then we'll open up for questions.
Appreciate you guys being here. Just briefly recap a couple things from Washington and then move on. Positives. We found a way to win the game, but also thought we got better. I thought that was important last week. We went into the game saying that we needed to eliminate running back number one, who we had a ton of respect for going into the game. He ended up with 24 yards and 2.2 yards per carry. He was averaging 103 yards per game. And number 12 had 2 catches and 35 yards and 0 touchdowns. He was leading the Big Ten in receiving touchdowns with 9. There were 2 guys that we went into the game feeling like we had to be aware of those guys and limit their production. Thought the staff and the players did a great job of managing substitutions and situations. Having all those timeouts at the end of the half were important. Led to 14 points in the middle 8. And then I think, probably the 2 most telling stats in the game, one dealing with the line of scrimmage. Our defense had 5 sacks and 9 tackles for loss, and our offense had 0 sacks and 0 tackles for loss. And then third down was the other one. We were 77% on third down. They were 30%. Areas for improvement, ball security. Can't work on that enough. We just have so much respect for that statistic. So making sure we're doing a great job of that. And then just making sure that whoever goes in the game plays up to the same standard. So that was kind of just some things I wanted to cover from the Washington game with you guys. From a Purdue perspective, Coach Walters, obviously know his background really well. Really kind of got on the scene as the defensive coordinator at Missouri. Did a really good job there, and then did a phenomenal job as the defensive coordinator at Illinois. Now been the head coach there since 2022. And, obviously, they've been aggressive in the transfer portal. I think they've gone and gotten 34 players out of the transfer portal. Some of the things, obviously, I think you guys are aware of, but, coach is calling the offense, and as a defensive guy, I think that's impressive as well as challenging. I think a lot of it has to do with the defensive coordinator was with him at Illinois, and I think he probably has a lot of comfort, in that guy because they worked together for a number of years. So if he was going to jump in and help, it was probably going to be opposite of that guy that he had the most confidence in. But he's calling the offense right now. They are based out of a spread offensive scheme, 11 personnel. They'll mix in a little bit of 12 personnel. We've been impressed with the Texas quarterback transfer, Hudson Card. The running back feels like he's been playing there forever. Maccabee, has been very, very productive back over the last couple of years. And then their tight end, number 86, Mac Clare, those guys kind of stand out to us. And then on the defense, led by Kevin Kane, again, who was the outside linebackers coach at Illinois and came with coach to be the defensive coordinator. Guys that stand out to us is safety number 31, Dylan Thieneman. Number 4, DN linebacker, Kadrian Jenkins. Defensive end number 15, Will Helt. And cornerback number 10, Kendrick Breedlove. For you guys that are familiar with Illinois on defense, this is a team that is going to match your personnel probably as much as anybody we have played. Where they're different than a lot of teams is they'll go 4 down and 5 down. Usually you see 4 down and 3 down. They'll go 5 down. and had a lot of success with that at Illinois, and obviously that scheme is still with them. And then on special teams, Chris Petrilli, their special teams coordinator, and their punter we've been impressed with, Keelan Crimmins. He's another Australian punter who transferred from Mississippi State, and is averaging essentially 45 yards per punt. So, the last thing I'd say before opening up questions is, I think the staff's done a really good job and the players understanding what we're trying to do, but of managing the 4-game restriction on redshirting. So you'll start to see some guys come available and play on special teams and offense and play on special teams and defense over these last couple games. Some will be ready to go right now because they've only played 1 game. Some will probably wait till the next game to use, because the big reason for that is on special teams, it's hard for Coach Lustig to get a guy ready for 1 week and then he's not playing next week. We'd rather be able to have him for 3 games in a row or 2 games in a row, and then hopefully the postseason as well. So that is the plan, is try to work some of those guys in that have games available in the regular season. So open up the questions.
Let's go to Rich Garcella, followed by Mark Woganrich.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, Rich. You're in a different room. You're in the kitchen. This is the first time in 11 years you've been in the kitchen and not in that room with the green paint.
That's very observant, except I've done this before from here. I'm showing off my wife's beautiful kitchen.
I don't know, Rich. I'm going to have Paul go back and check the records. I don't ever remember you being in any other room than the green room with the green paint and the trim.
Yeah, that's my cell. Yeah, that's where I usually work from.
Yes, sir.
So anyway, what have you seen? How have you seen Drew, Bo, the younger quarterbacks, develop and progress this year with Andy and Danny?
I think a really good example. Drew's a morning guy, right? So, he's in there watching film this morning at 6:30 a.m. Bo's in typically for a number of hours in the afternoon. I think Gronk has really turned it on here recently, and then hopefully Smolik will be available again, to us here very, very soon, and it looks great. But I just think it's a combination, right? It's a combination of most of these guys, all of them, are a year older. They're a year older in their college experience. They're watched a ton of film. In some ways, playing in multiple schemes is helpful. It's funny, I was listening to Jay Reed talk about it the other day, and the reality is there's things that Brent Pry did very well. There's things that Manny did very well. There's things that Tom Allen does very well, and there's things like for a guy like Jay Reed that can learn from all of them, right? So I think if you look at our quarterbacks, there's a lot of similarities there in terms of what Danny's been able to do in his evolution as a coach, as well as the players. Andy's obviously done a really good job, and I think one of the things that's attractive to our quarterbacks, as well as the quarterbacks that we're recruiting, is it's probably more of a pro-style system in terms of the huddle, in terms of the play calls. Now, that's changed, right? A lot of NFL teams are running spread schemes right now, so it's kind of more of a combination of all these different things, whether it's 2 backs or heavy sets or no backs or whatever it may be. But I think they're a year older. I think they're more comfortable and confident. I think they have a better understanding of how to watch film and how to prepare. I think when you're a young player, you kind of still watch the game as a fan and just kind of follow the ball. And I think, we talk weekly about just kind of their process evolving over time. And I think Danny and Andy have obviously helped with that. So I'm pleased. with their maturation. I think Drew looks consistently comfortable and in control in the games. I think probably the biggest thing for him that I've noticed is his mobility. I think has been a huge factor for him and for our offense, especially vertical scrambles up in the pocket, stepping up and climbing the pocket has been big. And then I think obviously the development of the positions around him too have played a major role in that too. So I think Danny, Andy, the quarterbacks, the other positions have all played a part in it. But I've been very, very pleased with their development and the direction we're headed.
Let's go to Mark Wogenrich, followed by Mike Gross.
Hey, James, how are you?
Good, how are you, Mark?
Good, thanks. The depth in your running back room has been tested this season. So how's that group holding up physically and mentally at this point?
Yeah, I think good. I mean, if you just look across college football and even the NFL, you better have depth at that position, especially if you're committed to running the football like we are. There's going to be bumps and bruises that come from that. We had two young backs that I think you guys knew we were excited about. I think early on there was a lot of talk about Quentin, and deservedly so. But I also think kind of in the Lash building, there was also a lot of excitement about Corey, different style back than probably the other three. But it was great to see him get in there. And the long run is probably what everybody is excited about, although he took hell for it in the team meeting, yesterday and with his teammates. The run that probably was most impressive to us is his first run, his first play as a college football player. The patience he showed, his ability and a little bit of a dirty read to get vertical. He's still got to put on some size and do a great job in the weight room, but he stuck it up in there and had a really, really efficient run. It's good. Those guys are being developed. I think we have talent at that position. And I think they're holding up well. And I think both Nick and Katron are really good complementary pieces to each other. And we're gonna need all of them, as this season continues.
Let's go to Mike Gross, followed by Frank Bodani.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you?
Good, thanks. It seemed like,
Appreciate you being in your typical room.
yeah, this is the Zoom backdrop. Yeah,
Yeah.
dining room. Yeah,
Appreciate it.
yeah. Wide receivers. It seemed like they not only were more productive in the Washington game, but also were targeted more. Maybe you won't agree with that, but if you do agree with that, how come against supposedly one of the best pass defenses in the country?
It's kind of what I've been talking about from the beginning of the year. We want to get as many guys touches as possible. How do you do that? You be better on third down. We were 7 of 7 on third down, manageable third down situations. And every time you're successful on third down, you got a chance for at least 3 more plays. So, when you're 7 of 7 on third down in the first half, that's going to lead to good offense, and that's going to lead to more touches and more opportunities for different guys. I think Washington had the number 2 pass defense in the country. We had a ton of respect for them coming into the game. But again, I think the answer is what I've been talking about all year long is when we can be better on third down, it's going to create more plays. It's going to create more opportunities to score. It's going to create more opportunities for touches. It's going to create more opportunities for explosive plays. Just, chuck it down the field.
Let's go to Frank Bodani, followed by Johnny McGonigal.
Hi, James. Good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, Frank.
Hi. Your running game just looked better. I don't, to the naked eye, Nick and Katron, I don't know, almost looked faster. I don't know do you have any thoughts on the running game in particular, those two guys in their performance Saturday? And can you give us any type of insight into Nick's physical condition going forward, shorter term, longer term situation, anything?
Yeah, short term, and you guys will obviously have a better idea come practice. I know you guys will be out there at practice, but short term. Um, yeah, in terms of that, I don't know. Those guys come ready to practice every single day, ready to work. I think you guys know, Nick's had some things lingering on and off kind of throughout the year, and has battled through them. Katron is a workhorse. Um, and they complement each other really well. It was even on the kickoff return. It was a shame. That got called back, and I think it was a legitimate call. We clearly held a guy hands outside, and I'll be the first one to admit that was a great call. That was a good call. That was a fair call. But in terms of the run game, I just think, again, it's going to be a boring answer that you guys don't want to hear. Just like the targets, for the receivers, the more we can stay ahead of the sticks, which back to the stat I said before in terms of tackle for loss, we didn't have any in the game. When you're able to stay ahead of the sticks and stay on schedule, then it just creates more opportunities. And for us, we're going to be committed to the run and being balanced and continuing to try to be as explosive as we possibly can, but continue to feed those guys the ball. And I think our offensive line had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Tight ends as well, coaching staff as well. And we're going to need that moving forward. But I think Nelly, Andrew Nelson, I think you guys know our sports scientist, has done a really good job of giving the team feedback and giving me feedback in terms of how to adjust practice and where we're at based on, the game we just played. And there's a lot of things that kind of go into it. Kind of off topic a little bit, but I feel for Washington a little bit, right? We play a 7:00 game and they probably didn't get back to Washington until probably 7 a.m. And then they got a Friday game. I don't really know if that's in, the best interest of the Big Ten, those types of things. But Nelly gives us great feedback on how to adjust our practices to make sure our guys are fresh and they're fast. And there's times where we got to push and work, and there's times that we got to cut back. Again, I think it goes back to the depth a little bit. When you got two young backs like Quentin and Corey, allows you to cut a little bit of reps from Nick and Katron from practice, because I think they can handle it. I'm not saying anything dramatic, but 2 reps a period less than they normally would take. It adds up over time, but it also allows those young guys to gain some experience and then hopefully put us in a position to be as fresh as possible on Saturdays. And that's the challenge. It's always been a challenge in college football. It's more challenging than it's ever been, specifically in the Big Ten, with the travel that we have to handle as well. So it's challenging. That's why a lot of these changes that have been made over the last couple of years and that are coming, I think, are even more challenging for the Big Ten. So we got to be very, very strategic. Really important discussions between head coaches and ADs and the commissioner, that we put our conference in the best position to be successful long term.
Let's go to Johnny McGonigal, then Neil Riddell.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, Johnny. How are you?
Good. AJ Harris, at what point did you guys know he was going to be as productive and as good, in a man-to-man situation and everything that he's done for you guys so far? When did you kind of know that he was going to be that kind of player for you?
I think Terry's done a really good job. When you think about the history and tradition at Penn State, and we got as good a history and tradition as anywhere in the country, but probably the corner room, there was less examples of that over time. And I think Terry's really changed that, dramatically. And that's no disrespect. I don't mean that any way disrespectful, but Terry's just done a really good job taking a position. And you talk about draft picks, and you talk about all conference players and those types of things, and depth, at a position, specifically in how the conference has changed, right? A lot more spread offenses, a lot more throwing the ball around. Terry's done a phenomenal job. So whether it's high school guys that we have developed, or whether that's going out in the transfer portal. As you guys know, we're not a big transfer portal team, but look at it a little bit like junior college recruiting used to be. Go out and fill an immediate need, or just bring some veteran leadership into the room. AJ is a little bit different because you're talking about bringing a guy in as a redshirt freshman, which is unusual, typically from the transfer portal. But obviously, if you look at Kimber as well as him, Kimber played a ton of football in the SEC. And then, we talk about AJ, just a very, very highly recruited young man that we were involved with out of high school. But once he showed up on campus, really bought into everything that we were asking him to do, tested really well physically, and then just embrace the competition in that room. So it was probably pretty early on, because one of the first things we do is baseline testing, and kind of checked all the boxes from a measurement standpoint, and then was able to pick up the scheme. The thing to me that's exciting is I don't think he's scratched the surface. I think there's a ton left for him. And I think he's playing at a high level, but I think there's a ton left for improvement there. And I think Terry's the right guy to coach him. And as good as he's been, I think he's got a chance to get a lot better. And I think that room does in general. I've been very, very pleased with how they're playing, but Terry deserves a ton of credit, and so obviously do the young men in that room.
Last question from Zoom, Neil Riddell.
Hi, James. I was wondering, you touched on this a little bit, but relative to the injuries and length of season, are you purposely cutting back the time of practice much at this time of the year?
Yeah, we always do. So we start to cut back in terms of the type of equipment we wear at practice. We make modifications there. In terms of the type of drills that we run in practice, typically they go hand in hand with the type of equipment you wear, the amount of reps at practice, the amount of time out at practice, and then also the amount of full speed reps compared to jog through reps. All those things gradually get adjusted over time. Nothing dramatic. It's just gradual reduction. As you know, at the end of the day, you still need the reps to make sure you're prepared to play the game, but there's also a cumulative effect that builds up over time as well. So, we gradually make adjustments. Those adjustments, one of the things that I constantly challenge Nelly on and Chuck on is that everybody's got to make adjustments, right? So, like, I got to make adjustments with the practice shell. Well, the strength coach needs to make adjustments in the weight room. The coordinators need to make adjustments. The position coaches need to make adjustments. We need to make adjustments with the veteran players who played a ton of football or the high rep guys from the previous game. All those things factor in. And as the head coach, what I have to make sure it's happening is that everybody's doing that, because what happens is the position coach doesn't want to give up any of his time. He wants the strength coach to reduce it. The strength coach doesn't want to touch any of his time. He wants it to come out of the position, individual, and so on and so forth. So everybody's got to be on the same page and coordinated that we're doing what's in Penn State's best interest and what's in the players' best interest.
On the right, Mark.
James, thanks for your time.
You too.
James, you talked a lot about Hakeem Beaman and everything that he kind of been through and overcame. Is there anything you can share with us with respect to him no longer being on the team? And how do you think that position fared without him being there against Washington?
Yeah, he's no longer a part of the program. I love Hakeem, love his mom. Been probably over 7 years from the high school recruiting process, and ups and downs and twists and turns and smiles and tears and everything in between. Graduated from Penn State, very, very proud of that for him. And did a bunch of good things on the field, but he's no longer a part of the team. In terms of the room, I thought guys stepped up. It was really cool to see some guys in there, whether it was Vicky Mupore or whether it was Caleb Artis. Really cool to see those guys, be able to get in there and get some work. Guys that have worked really hard. If you look talking about some other guys, that we've had discussions about. Xavier Gilliam is a guy, just kind of looking at the chart here. I think we tried to hold so that we would have the ability to be able to play him moving forward, but he's a guy that we got a lot of excitement about in the program. I think Alonzo's, impact, guy that we weren't sure exactly what we had, but is continues to trend in the right direction as he's getting more and more healthy and playing himself back into shape. I think at one point he was about 325 pounds. I want to say he's about 305 right now and moving really well. So good. I think obviously Devon and Zane, kind of lead us in there. Keziah is a guy that we didn't have last week, which magnified it. Keziah was out last week. We expect to have him back. But that magnified it, So, there are three veteran players that have played a ton of football for us, and we're going to need them to continue to play well as these other guys continue to grow. But I would also view Alonzo as a veteran player for us now. So we got four tackles that I think it's really kind of the position you want to be in, to have four guys that you feel really good about, and then a battle for that fifth position with some young developmental guys, hungry.
Up front in the middle, Seth.
Hey, Seth.
James. You talked about getting some freshmen, some more playing time over the last 3 games. Does that change at all the green light, yellow light chart? And who are some of those true freshmen that you feel, maybe most confident in playing a decent amount?
No, the way we look at the green, yellow, red, that's kind of green is in terms of you're burning their red shirt. Yellow, you're trying to hold their red shirt if you can. And red shirt is a guy that, most likely is going to red shirt. And all those things can change based on injury. What I'm saying is, we manage this, that now we should be at this stage, a lot of these guys be able to play and still be able to keep their red shirt. I think Max Granville is a good example. We had decided, I guess in some ways to green light him in terms of if we needed him to win, he was going in the game. But we weren't just going to put him in if he wasn't necessarily needed. So, we were fortunate over the last couple games to be able to get through those games and not have to play him. Because what I'm very sensitive to is you put a guy in for 3 plays. Like, once you're going to play a guy, there's got to be a commitment throughout the program on special teams with the coordinators and with the position coach that the kid and their parents feel like at the end of the year, it was worthwhile. It was in everybody's best interest. So some guys, that I would say fall in that category right now is Corey Smith and Tyseer Denmark, Egan Boyer and Donnie Harbor, Xavier Gilliam, Max Granville, Jalen Harvey, Anthony Specca, Belgrave Shorter, Woosley, and Mitchell. Some of those guys, it'll be this game. Some guys, it'll be next game. But the guys that have only played in 1 game, they're good to go. The guys that have played in 2 games, we'll probably try to hold them for another game. I think, Terry is a pretty good example with Kenny and John. He rotates them every other game. And last week, it was Kenny's time to be ready to go if the game presented an opportunity. So he was able to get in there. So he's played 2 games. John's only played 1. So this will be John's game. Now John can play the rest of the year. And then not this game, but then next game, Kenny will be in a similar situation.
Over here on the right, Tyler.
Hey, James, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. At the linebacker position, outside of late when you brought in a lot of your younger players and reserves, it seems like it's been very geared towards Kobe, towards Tony, and then obviously Dom that he's gotten more. Is that an area? I know the depth cultivation has been something we've discussed. We haven't really seen that take place in games. Is that something where with some of the younger guys like a Specca that you hope to maybe reach the end of the regular season in a better spot, feeling better about depth than maybe how you feel about it in this moment?
Yeah, Speck is a guy, again, that we were trying to redshirt if we can. It may not play itself out like that. We'll see. Kobe's just playing really well. And obviously it's a little bit like the quarterback position. It's hard to take that guy off the field because he runs your defense. That's magnified a little bit because Tyler Elsdon's had some bumps and bruises, so that's factored into it. Tamir had some bumps and bruises earlier in the year, so he's missed some time. But we need Tamir to really start coming on right now. He shows some really good flashes. We got to get Tyler Elsdon healthy again. So all those things kind of factor into that. And Tamir, both at the will linebacker position as well as the Mike linebacker position. DeLuca's another guy, exactly what you're going to get with him. We're creating some depth because he can play both outside linebacker positions. So what we didn't want to do is he comes off the field every time we're not in base. So being able to create the flexibility that he can go to the other side, that helps with that. I think Dakari's done a really nice job. I think has started some games for us and done some good things as well, but we don't have great depth there. We're developing it, but we've had some bumps and bruises along the way as well. But I think once we get to the point where Speck is available, that will help. But a lot of it just has to do with Kobe playing very, very well right now, and some of the other guys having some bumps and bruises at a position that that happens. Very similar to kind of what we talked about at running back.
Over here in the middle, Max.
Hey, James.
Hey, Max.
You mentioned at Saturday night that you had thanked the administration for making sure the whiteout was a night game. I know we spent a lot of time in the summer talking about the factors that go into it. I know some of it's out of your control, but past 3 years, the games have been pretty lopsided. I guess when you look back, how comfortable are you with that selection process and how it's ended up recently?
Yeah. As you guys know, we spent a lot of time talking about and working towards, as players and coaches, controlling the things that you can control. So I'm not going to spend any energy on time on things that are outside of my control. I think our football program and the administration have made it very, very clear in what we'd like to do and how we'd like to do it. And that's all we can do. That's all we can do. I do think part of the reason the games have been a little bit lopsided is because of the crowd and because of the environment. That plays a factor. Home field advantage is a real thing, and when that's the whiteout, it's even more so. It creates a real challenging environment, specifically on offenses. But we will make our case with what we'd like to do and how we'd like to do it. But we're going to need cooperation from others to make that happen.
Over here on the left, Mike.
Hi, James. With the training table in and the stadium, and now with the dorms coming in across the street on University Drive, and you've worked really hard to make a lot of these things happen. Are the big pieces in place? The big picture things that have taken 11 years to happen? Are there any big pieces that you are still looking forward to in the years ahead?
Well, what I will say is, number one, I'm appreciative of all the work that's gone in over our 11 years. One of the things I'd like to show you guys at some point is we've taken before and after pictures of everything. And I think back all the way to standing on that turf practice field, and my back was up against the fence, and you guys were asking me questions. A lot of the same people in the room were asking me questions about facilities, and that was a battle when I first got here. The turf, we weren't allowed to use the turf because it hadn't been replaced in 10 years, our turf field. So I'm very, very proud of the progress that we have made. I'm very, very appreciative of the board leadership over my 11 years here. I'm very appreciative of the presidents over my 11 years here. I'm very appreciative of the ADs. I will say this. In the last, I guess it's probably been 3 years with Neely and Pat and Matt Schuyler, and now pretty soon Kleppinger. It is changed. And again, very appreciative of the support that we've gotten over 11 years, but I would say in the last 3 years, it's been different. And I would say specifically in the last year and a half, it's been different, because the first year and a half, when you get on campus, you're just trying to kind of figure it all out. And once they were able to figure it all out, we are getting the type of support at a level that I think this place demands and should have. But we are getting the type of support in the last year and a half through those people that we have not had here. So is there still things to be done? Yes. Yes. We'll be saying that for the rest of our time here, is because you guys know it's constantly a moving target. But I think that was the problem, right? When you stop trying to get better on a daily and a yearly basis, and you're not bold and aggressive with those things all the time, you can fall behind, and you can fall significantly behind. So yeah, there's still a lot of things that we have to get done, but we are closer. Not even close. We are closer than we have been in my 11 years here. Not even close from a support standpoint and from a commitment standpoint.
Last question in the back, T. Frank.
And again, that is a credit to Neely Bendaputi, Matt Schuyler, Kleppinger now, and clearly Pat Kraft. Clearly Pat Kraft, walk-on linebacker in the Big Ten, who approaches his job like that every single day.
T. Frank?
And I mean that with the total respect.
Good afternoon, James. All the way back here.
T. Frank, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Great.
We've talked a lot about depth and playing freshmen and things today, but I'm curious, from the way that you've played games so far this year, there have been plenty of lopsided victories, but the game flow hasn't really presented an opportunity for like a third quarter to get a bunch of players into the game, and more importantly, get your starters out of the game earlier. So I guess from that perspective of the number of reps on offense and defense, how do you feel your team is positioned heading into the final 3 weeks of the season and then beyond?
I think good, but like that's kind of like where all this has become challenging, right? The Big Ten is not the Big Ten that we always remember. Like the SEC is no longer the SEC that we all remember. When you bring these teams in and you increase the competition week in and week out, this is not your grandfather's Big Ten. This is not your father's Big Ten. And same with the SEC. So you're not going to have these lopsided games that you've had in the past. It's going to be more like the NFL, where a lot of these games are one possession games. The interesting thing is now that becomes magnified because we've just increased the competition. We've just increased the talent, but then we're going to reduce the roster sizes. So this has become more challenging than it's ever been. Reduce the roster size, transfer portal, NIL, travel in the Big Ten. This is a very different challenge than it's ever been, and that's where this type of commitment and this type of support is important. I'll give you a perfect example, which you guys know. I had Kevin Threlkill doing an ongoing study throughout the season of West Coast teams that have traveled east and East Coast teams that have traveled west. What's the win percentage? What was their travel plans? How did they travel? Where did they practice? Where did they stay? All these things. It is critical. And then you better have the support to be able to do it from your athletic administration. You better have your support on campus as well in terms of when you can travel and how you can travel. There's so many things that go into it. So I think we're positioned fairly well right now because we've been very, very strategic. I know you guys get probably sick and bored of talk about red, yellow, and green. But again, I think those conversations are more important than what they ever have been. I think the 4-game decision was one of the better decisions the NCAA's made in the last 10 years. I think we will probably get to a point where there'll be 5 years of eligibility. Because if you're going to reduce the roster size, I don't know how you do that and still redshirt guys. And then it also takes away the problem that you're seeing in college athletics and specifically college football, where guys are coming in and telling you they're redshirting. If you have 5 years of eligibility, that takes away that dynamic for the player, takes that dynamic away for the coach. And I think that's something that's going to that's been something that's been talked about for a long time in college athletics and specifically football. But I think that's going to come to a head here sooner rather than later, in my mind, in the conversations that I'm a part of in the Big Ten and with the AFCA.
Thank you very much, Coach.
Thank you.